Hello and welcome to another episode of Mike and Dave's Hi-Fi Riff. I'm Mike Evans.
and I'm David Price.
Somewhere, and this talking box here is my colleague David Price.
Hello, hi.
Ah, you are here. Good, excellent. And today we are going to be talking about this rather bizarre thing which you're hiding behind, which is a
Sony SAS1 active loudspeaker.
I've never seen anything like this in my entire life. This is just the most bizarre bit of hi-fi. And another, dare I say, batshit crazy product from Sony, our favourite manufacturer.
Yes.
Just tell me a little bit about this. What on earth is going on here?
Well, this is, I think, Hi-Fi's most unique product, or certainly most unique speaker ever, because it is a hybrid electrostatic and moving coil loudspeaker here. So I'll just try and lift this up a bit so you can see it. There you go.
Why is it so heavy?
Because it's got a lot of stuff in it.
A lot of stuff in it.
Yeah.
Do you want to expand on that?
Yes, if you give me the chance.
I was just giving you a moment to get your breath back.
Thank you. So yeah, this is a lot heavier than the Strathern turntable, I can tell you.
Yes.
So this was, I think, the most innovative speaker that on sale when it came out in 1995, and it's a hybrid electrostatic moving coil with a motional feedback moving coil bass driver, and we shall get into that in a minute. But suffice to say, find another one that like it. I think is the.
But it's active as well, isn't it?
It is,
which is probably why it's weighing so much.
Yep.
So yes, so let's have a think then. So Martin Logan.
Yeah. So if it was,
that's the only one I can think of, which is remotely similar.
Yes, it's a sort of absolutely, but it's actually technically more sophisticated than Martin Logan because it has motional feedback, and we will talk about that in a moment. But even weirder is that it wasn't really a hi-fi product.
No.
It was sold as part of the Sony La Scala system, which cost £1,500 in 1995. And if anyone's ever seen a La Scala system, it's a nice-looking, tidy-looking kind of midi stack system, I think is probably the right way of describing it.
Yeah.
So it would have had a CD player, a optional mini disc. I think it had a cassette deck as well, all front loading, and a preamplifier. But there's no need for a power amp because it's powering these active speakers. But the interesting thing is that reputedly these speakers formed about 75% of the cost of the system.
I bet they did.
Yeah.
I bet they did with all that tech in there.
So
it's just fantastic.
Yeah, so you'd be looking at maybe a pair of speakers active speakers costing over £1,000 had they been, as it were, part
in
of
1990.
Yeah, 95, yeah.
95.
Yeah, which is
wow.
Kind of cheap for what they are and what they do.
It's mad,
yeah,
isn't it? And why would you pair them with a sort of a very average MIDI system?
Yeah,
just weird, just weird. I think they just look absolutely incredible. I don't know if we can get an idea of how deep they are, but they go on forever. They're just amazing things. Yeah. And so you plug them into the mains, and then you have a phono to each speaker from your input, whatever that may be, mini disc or CD player or whatever other weird format Sony were making that week.
For a preamp out into each speaker via an RCA
yes,
phono.
Of course, yeah.
Each speaker obviously has its own power supply, power lead, just as per a quad electrostatic or whatever, or any other active speaker. But it's amazing. Why would you do a MIDI system speaker with an electrostatic drive unit?
Where did you get these from?
eBay.
Did you?
So,
people were just. Did you have to buy the whole of the system?
No.
Okay, that was lucky.
Presumably the rest of the system had died.
Yeah, these are going to last forever.
Yeah.
I mean, they're built like tanks, aren't they?
Well,
just so weird.
yeah.
So tell me about this, the active feedback system.
Yeah, motional feedback.
Motional feedback.
So
Sounds like a Rush lyric.
Yeah, it does actually. It sounds like a Rush album. In fact.
Does, yeah.
So, I'm sure we know our Hi-Fi Riff viewers are many of whom are incredibly well versed in all of this kind of hi-fi weirdness.
Yes.
But basically, the system I think was first commercialized in the mid-70s by Philips. I'm not sure that Philips necessarily invented it, but Philips made a range of motional feedback speakers in, I think, 74, 75, 76, that kind of time.
And we heard a pair recently.
We did, yeah.
We heard a pair recently, because full disclosure here, we've not long come back from the Bristol Hi-Fi show, which was a fantastic show.
Yes.
Great to have them back after, I think, 3 years.
Yeah.
Just brilliant. And we saw our good friend Arthur Kubasarian.
Yeah.
Who used to be who used to be, well, he was the founder of Pink Triangle, the hi-fi legend, and he had a pair in his listening room.
He did.
We listened to them. Yes. Yes. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. So Philips started the ball rolling with
Philips
these.
started certainly manufacturing a kind of commercially available version.
Yeah.
But basically, it's quite simple in theory, anyway, if not in practice. The bass driver has a second voice coil in it, so this is designed to basically to monitor what the bass unit is doing as it moves in and out like that, and as bass units move in and out, you put a signal into them. They have their natural friction or natural inertia because of the motor system and the roll surround, obviously. So they will as it were, the deflection forward and backward will be less than maybe it should be because of the mechanical loss, as it were.
Right.
Emotional feedback basically monitors how far it goes in and out, and says, right, it needs to go further out because of the mechanical loss. So we'll put more power into the drive unit. So it's a very good and effective and clever system. And if you hear the original Philips ones, even though they look weird, they look kind of like they should be in some sort of, someone's your granddad's attic or something. They're really not a kind of mainstream looking thing, but they work. The system works, and I've heard very impressive sound out of Philips motional feedback speakers. Yeah,
they had to stop making them though, didn't they?
Yes. Too expensive to make.
And then Sony put them in a MIDI system.
Yes, as you do.
It's just mental, just mental.
But I mean, exactly. There are quite a few subwoofers these days that use motional feedback, purely for that exact reason, to make sure the sub goes out, as it were, and moves the amount of air that it should be.
It's very clever.
Yeah, it is, and it's intellectually correct as well.
Yes.
If you've got a kind of lossy mechanical moving core drive unit, then you monitor the loss and compensate for it electronically. That's the right thing to do. But yeah, too expensive for.
And if that wasn't enough, they decided to put an electrostatic just on the top for good measure.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So this is I think it's 25 mil by, I can't remember what the exact dimension. 25 mil by 100 mil treble electrostatic treble unit, and it's a proper electrostatic, and it pushes out 8 watts even just by itself, and it's a very good one as well. It sounds really good.
Just remarkable.
Yeah, it's incredible. It sounds very clear and very kind of clean and precise.
Yes.
And you're an electrostatic fan, Mike, aren't you?
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Well, I think this doesn't give anything away to the quad electrostatic panels. It's really good.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So this is sort of and we were chatting about this earlier. It forms a sort of an orderly queue of really bizarre Sony products over the years, doesn't it? And
it does.
And not just in hi-fi, but all sorts of things. And the example you gave, which made me smile, was the original PlayStation played SACDs, didn't it? Which is just
well,
bizarre.
so many crazy things they did was the Alcassette, for example.
Gosh, yeah.
So
Betamax.
Yeah.
And maybe DAT to a certain lesser extent, mini disc.
Yeah. Well, Sony were a great innovating company. I think they had lots of boffins in a very large laboratory, presumably with white coats and pencils in their top pocket, coming up with all of these new formats, all of these new ideas, and then they have the marketing muscle to get that out into the market, didn't they?
And they never really came up with a duff product. It was all about adoption, wasn't it? Whether people used them or not. So, in fact, Betamax was famously better than VHS. Alcassette was actually a pretty funky format. You and I are mini disc fans, even though it's compressed and lossy. But and again, this is something you said earlier. When the Walkman first came out, people were saying that's mental. No one's ever going to buy that, and the rest is history. So,
yeah, absolutely.
But they're not quite the same with their emotional feedback, electrostatic hybrid, power-driven,
active
loudspeaker.
When people said no one's ever going to buy that, then they may have had a point.
Yes. Yeah. It's and technologically fantastic. Not quite the most attractive speaker in the world if it's part of a MIDI system, is it? Because actually, from memory, the rest of the MIDI systems which they made around the era looked quite smart. They probably weren't as well built. Well, they did nothing was as well built as that. No. You could build a house with those, but they look good. Yeah. But that's sort of a little bit of a runt in the litter, isn't it? Aesthetically.
But the sort of the clincher to the story really is that shortly after this came out, Sony released their high-end reference electrostatic, which I think is 1st of February 1996. It was the SSR10. Don't expect to see it on eBay, and if you ever do, the seller won't post it because it's it's rather large.
Sure.
But I remember these coming out when I was writing for Hi-Fi World, and they were about 10,000 quid, I think. That sort of price, which can be, I don't know, 15, 20 grand now. Massive, huge things. And Sony's flagship speaker to go with their CDP R1 and DAS R1, the flagship
transport and DAC.
Yeah, CD transport and DAC.
They were amazing, actually.
So this was the time when Sony were really serious about high-end.
Yes.
And did all kinds of weird and wonderful things. And this was a kind of strange orphan. It was almost like a kind of skunk works project that maybe came from the SSR10 project, and they thought, well, that works well. Let's stick one in a mini system.
Sure.
That'll annoy Technics or Iowa or something.
Yeah, amazing.
But when you listen to it, it does sound. You can hear the cabinets a bit because they are, they're not the quietest. But there's a big thump to the bass. It sounds very strong. Sounds very, very sort of punchy and engaging, but with this lovely, fluffy, silky treble, basically, that you get from this panel. So it's better than you think, I think. But I just wish that because there are some plastic parts on it, and I kind of wish, like this bit here is plastic, this housing for the
sure.
Yeah. But if only they'd done a kind of high-end version of this, with kind of magnesium casting around the electrostatic panel or something like that.
Sure.
It would have been amazing, and a better cabinet that wasn't sort of kind of cheap MDF with a sort of fairly flimsy veneer on it.
Sure.
It could have been amazing.
We're fans of lots of Sony products. So, for example, the high-end CD players are really gorgeous.
Yeah.
We love the tuners. We did a riff on the tuners on the 777 and the 770.
Yeah.
Which we both own. We haven't really talked too much about their amplifiers or their turntables or, dare I say, the speakers. But actually, I remember listening to the ES loudspeakers back in about 88, and they had square drivers. Do you remember they had square drivers? And actually, they sounded great.
Yeah.
They were massively underrated speakers. And in fact, I dare to say, if you were to go onto eBay, you'd probably find some really cheap now, and
Yeah.
because nobody talks about them, nobody refers to them, but they were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I
Yeah.
really, really liked them.
Yeah.
But they never sold, in the same way their turntables never really sold, and their amps never really sold.
Yeah.
But you know, some of the peripherals were
these
great,
never really sold.
and they never sold either. But I mean, how mad is that? But you know, again, it's just such an imbalanced system. Clearly, wasn't it? If you spent £1,500 on that system, and actually the preamp and the source was only 50 pence,
Yeah.
then it just all seems a bit weird, doesn't it? Flying in the face of all of our hi-fi advice.
Yeah.
We always say spend the most you can on the front end, and accordingly down the chain.
Absolutely.
But Sony do the opposite as usual,
Yep.
with their amazingly weird thinking sometimes.
Because they can.
Because they can. They've got the budget and the R&D.
Yeah.
But what amazing bits of kit.
Yeah.
I'm so pleased you bought them in.
Yeah.
I've never seen them before.
Well, they're a kind of curiosity. They're a curio, aren't they?
They really are.
And you can pick them up for £300 to £400 to £500, depending on condition. And actually, they're a sort of bargain for that in a way. But obviously, you want a very well preserved pair, because they're not exactly cheap to fix. And
no.
So unless you're a real hardcore speaker geek, I wouldn't buy them to fix them, as it were.
Yes.
They have a certain sound that's fun and really rather special. And I think I know of no other motional feedback hybrid electrostatic active speaker. I think that's Sony goes mad kind of territory.
It
isn't
really
it?
is.
Yeah.
It really is. Again.
Yes.
And I think what we need for some of your wacky world of hi-fi is a space where we can exhibit. We need like a little museum space, so we can have Dave's wacky hi-fi museum somewhere. So with a sofa, so we can talk about weird and wonderful things, and a bar.
A bar would be good.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, wasn't that the Bristol show which we've just been to? That sounds exactly like it.
Yeah.
There we are. Look at that. We're gonna do the impossible here. We're gonna do a riffometer.
Yeah.
On these, and these unique sort of one-offs. What are you gonna give these out of 10?
7.5.
Okay. Where's it dropping points?
It's sort of slightly non-serious, non-audiophile build quality in some areas. In other areas, it's amazing.
Yes.
It's like a kind of glorious failure, really.
Yes, sure.
But it still sounds really good. And we measure it by kind of quad standards, and it's not so good.
Sure.
But it was a MIDI system speaker.
Unbelievable.
And it's the best ever MIDI system speaker.
By a million miles.
By a million miles,
yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to give them a 9, because I just think it's just such a cool thing to do, and it's just got everything packed into one box, and I can't believe it's real. In fact, if we did an April the 1st riff, this would be it, wouldn't it?
Yep.
So, but no, it's the truth.
It was real.
They're sitting here squashing you.
Exactly.
So, brilliant. And on that note, thank you very much for bringing them in.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much for watching this episode of Mike and Dave's Hi-Fi Riff, and we will see you at the next one. Thanks a million.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.